Welcome to Medica Scientific, the game that puts students in charge of a virtual company. This is the home screen, which displays the layout of a manufacturing facility company with 2 production lines. On the top we have the custom line, and below is the standard. By clicking into either of these lines, you'll see its unique decision-making stations and queues. Here we have the custom line, and if we use the top navigation bar, we'll be easily directed to the standard line. Returning to the home screen, if you swipe from the left, you'll see this side menu, which shows the standings table, which will display how much cash each team has on hand, the history tab, which shows you who on your team made what decision and when, the settings tab, which allows you to switch the game's language. We currently have English, Spanish, and Portuguese. From the top navigation bar, you can access the workforce. You'll come here when you want to change the number of employees. Remember that it takes time for rookies to become experts, at which point their salaries and productivity will increase. If you don't wish to increase the size of your workforce and instead make your current employees work longer hours, you can change the length of their work shifts in the manual processing station located on the standard production line. Keep in mind that working longer shifts means that overtime needs to be paid, and overworked employees could quit. The last thing I'll mention before moving on to how the game is played is the Financials tab. Students will come here when they want to make or pay back a loan. If funds are low and inhibiting growth, then a loan might be a good idea to buy machinery or hire new employees. So where to begin? Let's start by going through inventory and pricing and looking for problems. It's then good practice to go through the different queues and see if you can spot any bottlenecks. From here on out, I'm going to be explaining the game using an example scenario. Your numbers will likely be different. However, the approach that we'll use is valid for both. Raw material inventory is vital to your company. It's important to always have a healthy level of raw material on hand so that your production can work to its fullest capacity. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see how much inventory you currently have, as indicated by inventory level, the cost per part, the price of placing an order, and what the lead or delivery time is for an order once it has been placed. By plotting the inventory, we can see how our inventory levels have been behaving over time. As you can see, for the past 50 days, the company has been periodically running out of inventory. Based on the current reorder point and quantity, the company is making an order of 800 units whenever the level of inventory reaches 200 or less. The problem with this, however, is that inventory has a lead time of 4 days, which means that once the order is placed, 4 days need to go by before the order can arrive, and the remaining 200 units are not enough to sustain production over the course of these 4 days. Raw material bought within the inventory section is shared between both production lines, which means that they both use the same raw material in order to operate. One important thing to highlight is that the standard line has priority over receiving raw materials. In other words, if there is not enough inventory to satisfy both lines, then the standard line will be served first, and whatever inventory is left, if any, will go towards the custom line. For this scenario, we know that for each unit we want to build in the custom line, it requires 1 part of raw material, but the standard line requires 2. So what should our reordering point be so that the company has enough inventory to work while waiting 4 days until the next order arrives? Let's go ahead and do the numbers for the custom line's inventory needs. To do so, we'll navigate to the order section in the custom line. If we plot the daily demand, we can see that the custom line has an average daily demand of around 80 units per day. And if we times that 80 units by 4 days, we realize that the custom line requires around 320 units. And let's see about the standard line. Again, we'll navigate to the order section, and we can see that the current setup is asking the line to produce 200 units, the order size, every 5 days, the order frequency. That equals 40 units a day, times 4 for the number of days, and then again by 2 because we know that the standard line requires 2 parts of raw material. Once we do the math, we can see that the standard line currently requires 320 units in order to operate successfully for 4 days. Now that we know each line's inventory needs, we can add them together, which gives us a total of 640 units. We'll then add 10 units to act as a buffer to protect us against the variance that we see in the custom line. This brings the new reorder point to 650 units, up from its current 200. So why is inventory so important? A lack of inventory can lead to idle production lines or underutilized resources. In Medica Scientific, whenever we receive an order in the custom line or try to produce an order in the standard line, given that there is enough raw material to do so, that order then becomes an accepted order, and the respective line will start working on it. In the case that there isn't enough raw material, those orders become accumulated orders instead of accepted, and will remain as so until we have enough inventory available to produce them. You can monitor your accumulated orders and the orders station on each of the production lines. Here, for example, we can see that there are some accumulated orders on the custom line. But don't worry, once we modify the inventory reordering point to the newly calculated 650 units, these orders should be taken care of. When it comes to pricing, both lines price their units differently. Starting with the custom line, let's make our way to the delivery section. For the custom line, the price at which you sell your products is determined by how long it takes to produce them. So people are willing to pay more for promptly delivered products. In essence, the smaller your average lead time is, the higher your selling price will be. Having accumulated orders and/or bottlenecks makes your custom line less efficient and delays your deliveries. Now let's find our way to the standard line for the pricing there. Again, we'll go to deliveries. When it comes to your standard line, you pick your product price, keeping in mind how the market is behaving. If your price is too low, you may be selling more, but at smaller margins. On the other end, if it's too high, you mightn't be selling much at all and could be losing out on potential earnings. Here we can see that our product price is rather low in comparison to the current market price of over $500. Much like the real world, the market is changing all the time. So let's look at how the market price has been behaving before we set on the selling price. By looking at the graph, we can see there hasn't been much variability over the past 50 days. So setting the price at $500 would be a safe bet for now. Let's move on to bottlenecks. Bottlenecks happen when the station before a queue has a higher output than the capacity of the following station. So it's good practice to check on all of the queues in your production lines. The plot on the left is a generally well-behaving queue, and the one on the right doesn't look so well balanced. As you can see, there is a rising accumulation of units over time. Let's look at the standard line, for example. If initial batching was outputting more units than what manual processing could handle, then we would see eventually an accumulation of units in Q3, or in other words, a bottleneck. To fix that bottleneck, we could do one of two things. We could reduce the capacity of initial batching by reducing the batch size, or we could hire more employees to increase the capacity of manual processing. And that should set you up nicely when first getting started with the game. Remember not to make too many changes at one time, as this makes it difficult to learn from your decision making. It's important to note that as your company grows and you decide to build more units, you'll need to recalculate your inventory reordering point and quantity, as your raw materials will most likely have changed. Just to recap, we made changes to inventory and pricing. However, there is still a lot of room for optimization and things you can do to increase revenue and productivity and outperform your classmates.